Welcome back to Only Talk Sports. We talk sports every single day, or at least we try to. I'm Roach Jeffrey. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Hit that notification bell so you never miss another video. We've been keeping up with the transfer portal as it has been going along, but one team that's been quiet for a while has been the Illinois Fighting Illini, but not any longer. The Oregon Duck transfer Quincy Guerrier has decided to transfer to the Illinois Fighting Illini. I'm going to go over how important of an addition I think that Quincy Guerrier could be for Illinois next season, and whether I think Illinois could be a Big Ten title contender next season. Now, overall, looking at Brad Underwood, he is a coach that a lot of people are conflicted with the Illinois Fighting Illini fan base. Some people really think he's done a great job getting Illinois to heights they have not reached in many years, and some fans think that Brad Underwood has not done a good enough job with the Illinois Fighting Illini. And overall, looking at Illinois this past season, there were definitely a lot of reasons to feel very concerned with Illinois because they had a great roster last season. They had one of the most talented rosters in the Big Ten, probably up there with Indiana as the most talented roster in the Big Ten Conference this past season, and they did underperform. They did struggle overall, and they had a lot of issues trying to find their way in the Big Ten last season, but I do think that part of it had to do with the fact that Illinois was bringing in so many transfer portal players at the same time, and sometimes when you're bringing in so much talent that does not mesh together at a high level, then it does cause a lot of roster problems. And looking at Illinois this past season, Matthew Meyer, he is a really good basketball player, and he could be a guy that does go pro now that he is out of eligibility. He could be an NBA player, and he was really solid for Illinois this past season, but he was having to be paired with Terrence Shannon, who is also a guy that demands the basketball and has the ball in his hands a lot of the time for Illinois, and both those guys were coming in from the Big 12, from Baylor with Matthew Meyer, and Texas Tech with Terrence Shannon. Both those guys were going to Illinois to try to make a great team last season for the Fighting Illini, and I don't really think that meshed together very well. They also brought in Dane Danger from the Baylor Bears. He was a solid player as well, but Dane Danger is a guy that also had some struggles having to compete against Zach Edey and Trace Jackson Davis, Hunter Dickinson, and all these other great bigs in the Big Ten. But I do still think the trio were great for Illinois this past season, but it's always an issue when your best players on your basketball team are all transfers because you're having to try to mesh that together, and I still thought that Dane Danger, Matthew Mayer, and also Terrence Shannon had great seasons for Illinois, but it just did not seem to all come together. And Sky Clark, he is gone, and Jaden Epps as well. Both those players are in the transfer portal. I think both losses are tough, particularly Jaden Epps, because he was actually really improving for the Illinois Fighting Illini last season, and he decided to transfer to Georgetown. Sky Clark left for Louisville. He left mid-season, so I don't think that's as big of a loss because of the fact Illinois was already learning how to play without him, but still two really talented players that are gone. And Illinois also still has some outstanding players because Terrence Shannon and Coleman Hawkins are testing the NBA draft waters. They could both come back. Matthew Meyer, he's gone. Dane Danger is coming back for Illinois, so Illinois' roster is going to have at least some of that continuity back because of the fact you did lose all those players, because last year you were bringing all these players in, but now some of them are going to be coming back for another year, so you'll at least have that continuity overall, and I think that could help make Illinois a better basketball team next season, but we're going to have to see if Terrence Shannon and Coleman Hawkins do return. But what does Quincy Guerrier provide for Illinois? Because Quincy Guerrier is a 6'8", 220-pound forward that is transferring in from the Oregon Ducks, and he only has 1 year of eligibility left. And I think that's a big key because some of the guys that Illinois brought in, they had multiple years of eligibility left and they were younger players. Quincy Guerrier is not that. He is a fifth-year senior going to be coming into Illinois, and he's had a lot of experience, and he did transfer from Syracuse to Oregon to Illinois. So this is his third school, which is a little bit concerning. You don't like to see the third school transfers. You like to have them where they've only been at one other school, but still, I do think that Quincy Guerrier, he was at Syracuse, and then he was at Oregon for the past couple years, so I feel like he kind of has settled into being in college basketball, especially at Oregon, and now he can come in and potentially be a really good veteran player for Illinois this next season and be able to help the younger guys maybe be able to develop. He averaged 9 points per game, 4.6 rebounds, and 1 assist per game, and he shot 42.3% from the field, 34.7% from the three-point line, and 58.1% from the free throw line. So he does struggle from the foul line. He's a solid three-point shooter, but that is not his strength of his game. He's a much better player attacking downhill and playing sometimes in the post, but he can shoot the three, but he does need to shoot a better percentage from the foul line to be really effective for Illinois next season. But I think a big reason why Quincy Guerrier, besides the fact that he is a solid veteran player coming in for Illinois, how he is going to be really helpful for Illinois next season, especially if Terrence Shannon and Coleman Hawkins come back, and you still have Dane Danger back as well. Quincy Guerrier is not going to come in and demand the basketball and expect to be the best player on Illinois next season. It kind of reminds me of how Duke has brought in players like Theo John and Ryan Young and also Jacob Grandison, some players like that, and you would actually be very familiar good with Jacob Grandison at Illinois a couple years ago. But Duke brought players in like that could come in and were veteran players to help be able to get the freshmen to play at a high level, and they weren't guys that were going to come in and score 10, 15 points per game. I think Quincy Guerrier kind of fits that mold. He'll be able to come in and be able to play off of Terrence Shannon and Coleman Hawkins if they both return, and potentially be able to mesh the roster better together for Brad Underwood to make Illinois a better basketball team next year instead of bringing in another guy that demands the basketball at a high level. And that is not what Quincy Guerrier is. I think he'll be a solid contributor for Illinois next season. And Amani Hansberry and Draymond Gibbs-Lawhorn are both four-star freshmen coming in for Illinois, so Illinois is not devoid of talent coming in. They've been bringing in a lot of talent under Brad Underwood, and you can knock Brad Underwood all you want, but the one thing he has done is brought in a lot of talent. But it is about keeping that talent and developing that talent, which is why a lot of Illinois fans are frustrated with Brad Underwood, and I can't understand that, but he has had some success, especially with players like Ayo Dosunmu, getting them to the NBA and having a lot of success while he was with the Illinois Fighting Illini a few years ago. But I do think that Illinois is an interesting team overall because they have a roster that is so in flux. You also have RJ Melendez and Brandon Lieb in the transfer portal. And the fact that Illinois has all this roster flux and all these moving pieces, I just don't think makes for a great basketball team overall. Zachary Perrin and Nicola Moretti are two other high school players that are coming in. But all of these names I'm throwing out are just way too much roster movement overall for the Illinois Fighting Illini. But I do think the good thing about Quincy Guerrier is he is an older player that can come in and just be a solid player overall for whoever Illinois has on the roster next season. And that's not all of what Brad Underwood's done in the transfer portal. Justin Harmon, a guy that averaged 14 points per game at Utah Valley this past season, and Marcus Damask, a Southern Illinois transfer that averaged 16.7 points per game this past season. Both of those guys are transferring in to Illinois, and what are both those players? Fifth-year seniors. They are guys that are very experienced, and I think all three of those players are going to be able to come into Illinois next season and have varying degrees of success. I think Quincy Guerrier is the biggest transfer portal addition by far because he is from the Oregon Ducks. He's played at the Power 6 level, and he'll probably be able to come in and match the production he gave at Oregon this past season, averaging 9 points per game. Maybe he can up that to 10 or 11 points per game, but Marcus Damask and Justin Harmon are both players will not be able to score what they did this past season, averaging 16.7 points per game, 14 points per game at their respective smaller schools. But if they can both come in and average around 7-8 points per game for Illinois and be solid depth pieces, maybe they'll be starters, who knows, particularly if Terrence Shannon and Coleman Hawkins are gone. But I'm looking at the Illinois roster and what Brad Underwood has done, and I think it's going to be another year of uncertainty for Illinois. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to win the Big Ten title next season. There are a lot of teams losing a lot of great players in the Big Ten next season, so it could help propel Illinois up in the Big Ten and be able to make them a better basketball team next season. I like what Brad Underwood's doing. I think he is bringing in some really good transfer portal players that are fifth-year seniors that will be able to come in, plug in and play, and not affect the team in a negative way. They're going to be able to come and be experienced players and potentially be able to help contribute next to Terrence Shannon, Coleman Hawkins if they do return, and also Dane Danger. And I think that would really help benefit Illinois if they could get Terrence Shannon and Coleman Hawkins back, because they're both really talented players. If they can come back, and then you also have some of the freshmen coming in like Amani Hansberry and Draymond Gibbs-Lawhorn, and you also do have Sincere Harris and Luke Goody coming back as well. I didn't even mention them. Sincere Harris was definitely a player that has some upside, and Luke Goody was solid when he did play some for Illinois next season. Illinois probably, as of now, has the most talented roster coming back in the Big Ten for next season. But it's going to be about Brad Underwood meshing all of this talent together. And if he can do that, then Illinois could be a Big Ten title contending team next season. But it's going to be very interesting because Illinois, they were a very talented team last year, but they had a lot of trouble being able to mesh that roster together. A lot of players were unhappy. A lot of players have transferred out of the Illinois program, and also losing some to eligibility as well in Matthew Meyer. But looking at Illinois' roster, there's a lot of talent. And I think bringing in a guy like Quincy Guerrier from the Oregon Ducks is a great addition for Brad Underwood and the Illinois Fighting Illini, because he will be a player that can come in and just be a veteran player overall. He's not going to do many things wrong. He needs to improve at the free throw line in his last season of college basketball, but he's a solid shooter. He's a solid overall player. And if Coleman Hawkins does leave for Illinois, he'll definitely be able to slide into that starting four spot, but maybe he'll be able to start anyway. Who knows what Brad Underwood's going to do with the roster if Coleman Hawkins and Terrence Shannon do return. But if they do, then Illinois will have a really talented team. Justin Harmon and Marcus Damask are really solid fifth-year senior veteran additions from smaller schools that can come in, plug in, and play for the Illinois Fighting Illini next season. But Quincy Guerrier is the best transfer portal addition by far for Brad Underwood, a very veteran, experienced player that can really help potentially be able to mesh the roster together next season at a higher level for Illinois than they did last year. And if Quincy Guerrier does a solid job for Illinois next season and helps the rest of the roster get everything together, then I do think that Brad Underwood and Illinois could be a really good basketball team in college basketball next season. Subscribe to the channel if you like sports content. Like this video down below. Comment down below what you think about Quincy Guerrier transferring from Oregon to Illinois, and whether you think Quincy Guerrier can help the Fighting Illini be a good basketball team next season, and whether you think Brad Underwood was doing a good job with the Illinois Fighting Illini in the transfer portal and being able to recruit, and whether you think he can mesh the roster together at a high level for Illinois next season. Follow me on Twitter as well. Link is in the description, and I will see you next time.